I know why you clicked this video. Yes, you're exposed. You want the most comprehensive, helpful, applicable guide for Mercury in retrograde that you can get your hands on. Well, lucky for you, today's your lucky day because I'm about to provide that. Mercury in retrograde is known to cause miscommunications. Potential glitches in technology may occur. It might make you prone to the smallest of mistakes, or past issues may resurface. I know in my case, I stutter a lot during Mercury retrograde. There's nothing wrong with stuttering, don't get me wrong, but it's like a short circuit almost. I don't really notice the other symptoms of Mercury retrograde. That's just mine. It's going to be different for everybody though. But at its absolute best, Mercury retrograde is a great time for reflection or identifying shaky foundations and correcting old or outdated mental patterns. And in this video, I want to create a guide, the ultimate guide, by the way, designed to help you utilize the energy of a retrograde Mercury to the best of your ability. And this guide will not only help you by providing tips and tricks given the upcoming Mercury retrograde in Leo on July 17th, based on your rising sign, based on your Mercury sign, based on your placements, you know. But lucky for you, I'm designing this guide to provide guidance and applicable tips and tricks for all Mercury retrogrades until the end of time. This is the only video you'll need. But I'll also distinguish how this transit may differ depending on whether your natal Mercury is direct or in retrograde, because yes, this energy will feel a little bit different depending on the direction of your natal Mercury. And so here are the chapters of information that I will be going over in this video, just so you know what you're signing up for. I learned to wink recently, and so yes, I have to show it off. Wait, like watch how clean this wink is. It's okay, that's probably cringe. I'm just gonna keep going. But first, let's go a little bit deeper into what Mercury in retrograde actually is. But before we do that, you know what I'm gonna ask. It is time to like the video, to subscribe to my channel. You can turn on notifications if you want, just to let the algorithm know that this video is your jam, but to also let me know that I am not completely out of my element, giving you the best astrology tips and tricks and handbooks that I possibly can. And so now we can actually get into the meat and potatoes of the video. Now, from a scientific and visual standpoint, Mercury appears to go retrograde because the Earth is orbiting the Sun at a different speed than Mercury. When Earth overtakes Mercury in its orbit, it creates a sort of optical illusion, kind of like when a faster car passes a slower one. It's an illusion that makes it look like Mercury is moving backwards across the sky from our point of view. And in other words, things aren't always as they seem scientifically, similar to how things aren't always how they seem mentally or information-wise during a Mercury in retrograde period. Things appear to slow down, which could trip some people up, especially those with prominent Mercury placements or those who were born with Mercury stationary. The reason why it's a little bit easier for people born during Mercury in retrograde is they're kind of in their element. It's like that saying when they say, oh, when a fish climbs up a tree, like you shouldn't judge it because a fish is climbing up a tree, because that's not its element. But if you judge a fish in the water, that's where it shines. This is kind of like the same with people who have Mercury retrograde natally. This is going to be their time to shine, whereas the stationary people, we're going to have to adjust a little bit. Now, depending on the sign that Mercury is going retrograde in, the nature of the glitches that you're going to be experiencing will be very, very different. It's the difference between like an error 404 message popping up on your screen and your computer catching on fire. Not really. That was kind of a joke, but the point is the nature of the glitches will be a little bit different, and you'll probably notice it, especially in the area of life where this sign is. But overall, we're going to see a lot of similar themes. And so on the screen, as you can see, you probably already see, I have a little bit of like the nuanced differences between what Mercury in retrograde looks like depending on the sign. And so obviously we're going Mercury retrograde in Leo at this time, so you can read that little blurb just to get an idea, but we're going to go deeper into it, don't worry. But you could also refer to this screenshot anytime Mercury goes in retrograde just to see what to expect. And now I I want to go deeper into the difference in how Mercury in retrograde can show up for you depending on whether your natal Mercury is stationary or direct, or whether it's in retrograde natally. And to see whether your Mercury is in retrograde or whether it's direct, go to astrology.com, generate your chart, find your natal Mercury placement, and see if there's a little R or an RX next to it. If there is no R or RX, your natal Mercury is stationary, and if there is, you have natal Mercury in retrograde. And so if you were born with natal Mercury in retrograde, you may be the kind who doesn't just blurt out what you're thinking. You likely mentally circle an idea or a thought first. You might imagine something, remember how it felt in the past, or quietly test it out in your head before speaking your ideas out loud. You want to make sure there's some truth to it. You may ask, wait, why is this thing done this way? Or does it actually make sense to me? It's not that you're being difficult necessarily. You're just not wired to follow a script that doesn't feel right to you internally. You need to understand things before you actually commit to it. And now here on the screen, I'm sharing some strengths and some weaknesses that your mind may naturally have if you were born with Mercury retrograde. And so when it comes to learning to understand your thought process, you can take what resonates so you can better understand how your mind works. And now if you are born with Mercury direct, you may think by doing. You're more likely to take in what's happening around you and respond, sometimes even before you realize what your opinion is. You don't need to over-process things before jumping in, although that doesn't mean you don't overthink at times. I relate. You learn best, though, by interacting or speaking or testing things out in real time, whatever method works for you, but you like to do it concretely. And so now here on the screen, I'm sharing some strengths and some weaknesses that your mind may naturally have if you were born with Mercury direct. And so when it comes to learning to understand your thought process, take what resonates so you can better understand how your mind works. And so when Mercury retrograde happens, it is going to affect each Mercury type differently. Because when Mercury goes retrograde in the sky, people with natal Mercury direct may feel temporarily out of sync with their usual rhythm. Their thoughts might feel a little bit foggier, timing may be slightly off, or communication may become harder when it comes to landing clearly. It's like that their normally outward responsive mind is being asked to pause, revisit, or internalize, which can feel frustrating if they're used to clarity or forward motion. But it's also a very valuable opportunity to slow down, reflect, and recalibrate what you've been saying, learning, or thinking on your autopilot setting. But for people born with Mercury retrograde, these transits often feel surprisingly natural. The world slows down to your rhythm a little bit, one that already prefers a little bit of reflection, revision, or non-linear thinking. And while others may be scrambling to adjust, you may be feeling more mentally clear, creatively in sync, and you may actually have an easier time communicating, or you may feel a sense of mental relief. It's not necessarily an easy time, but it feels familiar, or like the external world is finally syncing with your inner one. And so you may be the type who's like, Mercury's in retrograde, I don't really notice. That might be why, and so hopefully that helps. Let's go into what Mercury retrograde means in the sign of Leo, which is what's coming up. If Leo is a sign all about self-expression and confidence, and Mercury is the planet of communication, then our thoughts surrounding Leo-like areas of our life may be in for a revamp or a slowdown, and this transit may feel especially potent as Uranus recently entered Gemini, which is a sign ruled by Mercury, and so we're already feeling a little wired at this time, And so this transit can stir up doubts around self-expression. Why is there a dog outside? Whatever. Confidence or visibility for some. Words may not come out as intended, especially when trying to lead, create, or be heard. People might revisit old creative projects, rework how they present themselves publicly, or rethink what attention really means to them. It's a time where pride, ego, and communication are going to do a little dancey dance, So miscommunications may feel personal at this time, but it's also a powerful window to refine your voice, reconnect with forgotten passions, and express yourself in a way that's more authentic and less performative. And now, depending on where Leo is in your natal chart, this energy will present differently. I'm a Leo rising, so I'm a little scared. But the tips I have on the screen for each rising sign will apply to people with natal Mercury in retrograde and natal Mercury in direct. And so taking what resonates depending on the general overview I gave for each Mercury type will be important. And I will also go over tips for what each Mercury placement can do to make the most out of this transit. So take these tips in, you're gonna need it, and hopefully it helps. For a 101 on what Mercury is your mental wiring. It's the mechanics for how your mind works, essentially. It doesn't tell you how smart you are. It tells you the filter through which your brain processes thoughts. In an earlier part of the video, I outlined what Mercury in retrograde could mean when it transits each Mercury sign based off of these mechanics. And so now I want to give some tips and tricks that everyone can remember to embrace to make the most out of this Mercury retrograde in Leo transit based on your personal Mercury placement. But think of the sign of your Mercury as the engine type in a car. It tells you how your communication runs. Is it a speedy car? Is it a smoother, reliable car? That's up for you to determine, but the sign describes the inherent qualities of your mental processes and communication style. And so tips for each natal Mercury sign can be seen on the screen here, whoosh, and note that this is applicable for natal Mercury direct and in retrograde. But we're not just going to go over the sign, no. We're going to go over your Mercury house as well, because your Mercury house placement is like the terrain or the road conditions that the car is driving on. It's the lens through which information is filtered through. Different terrains will drive very differently, very differently. And so I also wanted to give you some tips for how all Mercury house placements can sort of go over and make it through this Mercury retrograde, and that can be seen on the screen here. And so take all the tips in whenever you have a thought, whenever you're writing a message, whenever you're working, doing an email, or even just like laying in your bed thinking about whatever. Remember these thoughts, remember these tips, and follow them if you ever feel a little bit of pressure. And so, what is your natal Mercury placement? How does Mercury in retrograde usually show up for you? And what's one thing you are hoping to get out of this Mercury in retrograde period? Comment down below, because I want to hear your thoughts, and maybe I'll have suggestions as well. And thank you so much once again for supporting my channel. I'm hoping this video helped, and I will hopefully see you in the next video, unless you hated it and then you never want to see me again. But if you've made it this far, I'll assume you don't. And so, yeah, bye.